So today we are doing the last section in this chapter, 2.8. And this section, 2.8, we are solving inequalities with one variable. So yesterday we solved equations with one variable. Today we're doing inequalities. So here's where I want to start, because I want to make sure that we have a really good understanding about what an inequality is actually doing. So what I mean by that is, if I have a graph, let's say, and we're going to start off something easy. Let's say I have this beautiful parabola. And my beautiful parabola crosses at, we'll say, -1, and let's say that's 3. Okay? Those are our two spots. All right. If I'm talking about an inequality, that means I have 4 different signs that could come into play. Is that correct? Right? So maybe for this one, this inequality would look like this. X plus 1 to represent the first factor, the first 0. X minus 3 to represent the second factor. And instead of it saying equals 0, we are going to say greater than or equal to 0. So now looking at this graph, if I wanted greater than 0, that's where it is in the positive world. So for this one, everything in the positive world are these 2 lines. So my solution, move that down just a little bit, my solution to this would be, for the first set, -infinity to -1, and because it's got the equal sign under it, I'm going to put a bracket on it. And, again, because it's got the equal under it, from 3 to infinity. If I had that exact same equation, and let's say I have x plus 1 times x minus 3, and it is less than or equal to 0, that is going to be everything that's below the x-axis, or in negative world, negative land, right? So the interval that would represent where it's less than or equal to 0 would be from -1 with a bracket to 3 with a bracket. Any questions? Right? It's just you're looking at the graph. It's up here, that's positive. Down here, it's negative. Right? If this just had a greater than or less than sign, the only thing that would change is instead of a bracket, it would be a parenthesis. Exactly. Okay? All right. So with that being said, we're going to go to example number 1. So here's example number 1. Very, very similar, for 1 through 6. Determine the x values that cause the polynomial to be, and that gives you 3 options. We want to know where they're 0. We want to know where they are positive. And then for part C, we want to know where they are negative. All right, so let's say I have f of x equals, let's go, x plus 5, x minus 1, and x minus 4. Okay? So we can answer A here, can't we? A wants to know where our x values are 0. That is at x equals, good, -5, 1, and 4. Good. All right, so that's what we've been doing forever. Positive and negative is where we've got to talk about. So if you were to throw this in your graphing calculator, 3, 4, 5 is one place it crosses. Crosses at 1, and 2, 3, 4 crosses here. So it should look something like this, hopefully. So then for part B, I want to know, where is this polynomial positive? So if I look at this, it is positive or above the x-axis from here to here and from here to here. There are 2 spots, right? So this would be positive from -5 to 1, and where else? Good, 4 to infinity, I agree. All right, now, you'll notice I put a parenthesis on that. Why did I put a parenthesis on it? Correct, it just wants to know where it's positive. Very good. All right, then for part C, we want to know where it's in negative land. Good. Excellent. So we have -infinity to -5 and 1 to 4. Very good. Yes, Dave.
So if it's just regular, like greater than or less than, like no equal to, do we still put a bracket or do we put a parenthesis?
Parenthesis. Okay. Bless you. All right. Any questions so far? Okay. So then what I want to do is I'm going to jump all the way to 13 to 20, and then I'm going to come back to the other part, because there's something additional new that I want to talk in the next section. So let's go to an example from 13 to 20. So here's example number 2. Here, this is 13 through 20. And in this section, it says, solve the polynomial. And it says, graphically. There we go. All right. So maybe we get something that looks like, I don't know, let's go with 3x to the third minus 2x squared minus x plus 6, and we're going to go where it's greater than or equal to 0. All right, so I'm not asking you to do all the math that goes along with it. I'm asking you to put it into your graphing calculator. So everybody grab your graphing calculator. Now when you graph it, it should look something like, it kind of crosses here and does this, right? So we need to know where this is, because from there to the right, it's all positive. So how do we go about figuring out where that 0 occurs? So we're going to go into our calculator, second and trace, or into calculate, right? And we go down to our 0. You're going to do your left bound. So you got to find that point. Then you're going to do your right bound. I have that this point is at the x value, negative 1.146. Does everybody agree with that? All right. So now how do I answer this question? Where is it greater than or equal to 0? That is everything on this side, right? And if it's greater than or equal to, I'm starting with this negative 1.146. But do I want a bracket or a parenthesis?
Bracket.
Good, bracket. Negative 1.146 to where? Infinity. Very good. All right, so that last section, you're graphing it and you're interpreting the graph. Do you guys need another example from there? No, we're okay? I mean, I know this is new, but I just want to make sure we're good with it. All right, so the next thing what I want to do is talk about what they call a signs table. Signs table is something new, and it's another way, if you don't have a graphing calculator, to determine if something is positive or negative. So, for example, let's say I have a signs table, or we're talking about a signs table. In a signs table, what you are going to do is you're going to make a line, and you are going to mark your zeros, wherever those zeros are, okay? Then you are going to choose a number between the intervals to plug in. So choose number between the intervals to plug in to see if it's positive or negative. Then, just from that table, you'll be able to decipher or answer the question. So, for example, let's say I have let's go x minus 3 times x plus 4, and I want to know where it's less than 0. So first of all, where are my two zeros? I have a 0 at x equals 3, and I have a 0 at x equals negative 4, right? So what I would do is draw myself this line and mark those two zeros. Now make sure you mark them in numerical order. It's kind of like you're putting it on a number line. So the one that goes on the left is the negative 4, and the one that goes on the right is 3, okay? Now we would pick a number that is smaller than negative 4. Negative 6. All right, Brooke, I agree. Negative 6. If I plug negative 6 in here, negative 6 negative 6 minus 3 is negative 9. Negative 6 plus 4 is negative 2. Negative 9 times negative 2 is a positive, right? So I'm going to put a little plus sign in that interval. So now I want to pick something in between negative 4 and 3. Well, what's the easiest number in there? 0. Good. If I put 0 in here and 0 in here, I get negative 3 times 4. Well, is that going to be positive or negative? It's going to be a negative, right? And then if I pick something bigger than 3, 4. All right. 4. 4 minus 3 is 1. 4 plus 4 is 8. 1 times 8 is 8. That's also a positive. Now that I have my signs table, I can answer my question. It wants to know, where is this less than 0? Yep, right here is where it's less than 0. So I would write that, again, from negative 4 to 3. And why am I using parentheses? Good. Just says less than, right? All right, let me do one last example, and then I'll be all done. Okay, you guys? All right, example number 3, technically. So example 3, This is your 7 through 12. It says, solve using a signs table. And so maybe I have, how about, let's go 3x plus 1 times by x minus 2 times by x minus 4. And I want to know where this is greater than or equal to 0. All right. So on my signs table, I'm going to have 3 zeros. How do I know there are 3 zeros? Yeah, there's 3 factors, right? Okay. So my zeros for the first one, this one is negative 1/3. This one is 2 and that one is 4. Again, make sure you put them on the signs table in numerical order. So I have negative 1/3, positive 2, and positive 4. All right, now I need to pick a number to plug in that's smaller than negative 1/3. Negative 1, I agree. So here's, sometimes students prefer to do it this way too. If I plug negative 1 in here, I get 3 times negative 1 is negative 3, plus 1 is negative 2. So in my first parenthesis, I have a negative. If I put negative 1 in here, negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3. So I also have a negative in the second parenthesis. If I put negative 1 in here, negative 1 minus 4 is negative 5 or a negative. If I multiply 3 negatives together, what do I get for my answer? A negative. So this is a negative in my first interval. Between negative 1/3 and 2, well, the easiest one is 0, right? If I plug 0 into my first parenthesis, I get a positive answer. If I plug 0 into my second parenthesis, I get a negative answer. And if I plug 0 into my third one, I also get a negative. So then what is a positive times a negative times a negative?
Positive.
Good. All right, picking something between 2 and 4, 3. All right, if I put 3 in here, 3 times 3 plus 1 is a positive 10, so it's positive. 3 minus 2, 1, which is positive, and 3 minus 4, negative. So what do I get for this interval? A negative. Very good. And then I have to pick something bigger than 4. 5. If I put 5 in here, what do I get for my first parenthesis? Positive. How about in the second one? Positive. And how about the third one? Positive. So 3 positives multiplied together gives us positive. And so now we need to do greater than or equal to 0. Now that we have our intervals, since it is greater than or equal to, I'm going to be using a bracket. Very good. The first one is from negative 1/3 to 2. So I have a bracket, negative 1/3 to 2 with a bracket, a U. My next interval starts where? 4. Good. And where does that go to? Infinity. And again, remember for infinity, it's always got to be a parenthesis. Any questions? I know it's new. Now, there's a couple where you're going to have to finish factoring, and they factored part of it and left you the rest to finish. Okay? All right, you guys. First time, this is going to be great. Yeah, go ahead. Just sign out for me, okay?